series of brain regions that are active during most of our waking hours when we're doing that thing that human beings do all the time, which is obsessing about ourselves, thinking about the past, thinking about the future, doing anything but being focused on what's happening right now. Meditators not only turn off the default mode network of their brain while they're meditating, but even when they're not meditating. In other words, meditators are setting a new default mode. And what's that default mode? They're focused on what's happening right now. In sports, this is called being in the zone. It's nothing mystical, it's not magical, you're not floating off into cosmic ooze. You are just being where you are. The cliche in self-help circles is being in the now. You can use that term if you want, but because it's accurate, it's slightly annoying, but it's accurate. It's more just being focused on what you're doing. And the benefits of that are enormous. And this is why you're seeing these unlikely meditators now, why you're seeing the U.S. Marines adopting it, the U.S. Army, corporate executives from the head of Ford to the founders of Twitter, athletes from Phil Jackson to many, many Olympians, scientists, doctors, lawyers, school children. There's this sort of elite subculture of high achievers who are adopting this because they know it can help you be more focused on what you're doing and it can stop you from being yanked around by the voice in your head. My powers of prognostication are not great. I bought a lot of stock in a company that made Palm Pilot back in 2000. That didn't go so well for me, but having said that, I'm going to make a prediction. I think we're looking at meditation as the next big public health revolution. In the 1940s, if you told people that you went running, they would say, who's chasing you? Right now, if you tell people you meditate, and I have a lot of experience with telling people this, they're going to look at you like you're a little weird most of the time. That's going to change. Meditation is going to join the pantheon of no-brainers like exercise, brushing your teeth, and taking the meds that your doctor prescribes to you. These are all things that if you don't do, you feel guilty about. And that is where I think we're heading with meditation, because the science is so strongly suggestive that meditation can do really, really great things for your brain and for your body. The common assumption that we have, and it may be subconscious, is that our happiness really depends on external factors. How was our childhood? Have we won the lottery recently? Did we marry well? Did we marry at all? But in fact, meditation suggests that happiness is actually a skill, something you can train just the way you can train your body in the gym. It's a self-generated thing. And that's a really radical notion. It doesn't mean that external circumstances aren't going to impact your happiness. It doesn't mean you're not going to be subject to the vagaries of an impermanent, entropic universe. It just means you are going to be able to navigate this with a little bit more ease.
It's great, isn't he? Just going to join the pantheon of the next big thing, right? Mindfulness. And let's look at some of the data that he was talking about, the research. Just even thinking of publications, when we start thinking about how much news there is about mindfulness, all of a sudden you see statistically from 1980 to 2015, if you just research Pub Research, I think it's called, PubMed or something. Yeah, when you research statistically how many publications there are, it's showing up on the front page of Time magazine, right? So it's no longer so woo-woo anymore. He talked about this, well, he didn't talk about it, but this idea of neuroplasticity. It's this idea that we can actually shift the way the brain is working. So what we think about, what we pay attention to, what we do actually shifts the brain science. And it's not just in children anymore, but with adults, we can actually do this as well. And mindfulness is a way that we can start doing this. One thing he talked about was this default mode network, and this is the part of the brain that actually helps with that mind wandering. 47% of the time, that means 47% of you are not paying attention to what I'm saying right now, right? Actually, that also works with ruminating, mind wandering. With meditation and mindfulness, this practice actually helps us tamp that down. We're actually more able to be in the present. We're not ruminating as much. Our mind is wandering not as much. There's a report out here that we talked about here. It's a study that they did, Antoine Lutz, where they started testing people that were going to get like a zap of heat and hot energy in their arms. And they realized that people were starting to get freaked out before it happened, right? There was this anticipatory, oh my gosh, you're going to zap me. There was the pain from actually the zap. And then there was this like stress afterwards of, oh my gosh, I can't believe I had to do it, right? And so all of this stuff is happening. They noticed that with people that were practicing mindfulness, it started actually lowering that anticipatory actually also decreased the stress of the pain afterwards. They still felt the pain, but the reactivity before and after was actually lessened. Pretty amazing, because we're tamping down this default mode network. Now, the other thing is, in studies, they've found that these are the 3 key benefits of mindfulness practice. Attention control, so we can be more present. Emotional regulation, so we can be calm or control the weather patterns around us. And then thirdly, we can actually become more self-aware. We understand what's going on internally, so that we can actually do something else externally. So now this also happens in our day-to-day life, and we did surveys pre and post SIY training. And just even from a practical leadership perspective, we make this very tangible to our day-to-day lives. We surveyed people before the program in terms of when in conflict with somebody, I take time to fully understanding what's driving their perspective. Beforehand, 44%. Afterwards, 60%. We're much more able to look at the other person's perspective. And also I'm able to pause before reacting, went up from 44% to 67%. So big jumps. This is just in the 4-week program, right? You guys won't get the 28 days, but if you start practicing some of these tools even after you leave our 2 days, in 4 weeks you can start seeing the benefit. So we are gonna talk about this in 2 ways throughout these 2 days. We're gonna talk about it in the moment practices. So we're not just having to be at yoga class to be able to be calm, right? We can actually take a few deep breaths and practice it with our client when they're triggering us. Or we can also do it when we think about talking about this in a dedicated way. Okay, so the practices when we do them in the moment are gonna get enhanced if we have this dedicated practice, like going to the gym. I actually like lifting weights or getting my cardio practice in. So I'm at, my office and I just wanna take the stairs, I'm not huffing and puffing. I actually can take the stairs or take a walk around the block at lunch and just get a little bit of breath, but it's not my way of getting my energy. This mental training, when we think about it, is also something we talk about when we talk about meditation being a practice of this. Meditation is one way to do mindfulness. That's what we've been practicing here in a little bit. But we'll also be talking about different ways of doing mindfulness practice. And it doesn't always have to be just a dedicated meditation practice. And so meditation, though, refers to a family of mental training practices that are designated to familiarize the practitioner with different types of mental processes. So we'll be talking about meditation in 2 ways when we start breaking down meditation. And the first one's gonna be in the way of just focusing on attention. So how do we get our stuff back into the moment when we're starting to think about, really, I have to pay attention to this client and they're telling me a lot of great data, but it's between 3 and 7 and I'm really tired. How am I gonna get my mind into this present moment? Right? I know with every new client when I worked at KPMG, the learning curve was really steep those first 6 months, I would say. Every time my brain was hurting probably a lot more, because I had to be very much more actively present in those moments. So I could learn the new organization, the new company, the new ways of operating, and really stay present. And that's what attention training is going to be able to have us do, stay in the present moment. The second one is going to be this idea of meta-attention. And this is the idea of noticing our quality of attention. So it's almost knowing that my mind has wandered, the meta-attention, and then being able to bring it back and notice what's in the present moment. Okay, so we'll practice both of these kinds of practices, the attention training, as well as the meta-attention training in the next 2 days. And now I'm going to pass it on to Brittany to help us do the actual first longer dedicated practice, and then we'll take our first break in the morning.
Yeah. All right, so this course was actually developed by an engineer, and so he developed kind of a process map for meditation. I guess like engineers need to have process maps. So the first step before you start following your breath is to set an intention. So you set an intention for why you're actually practicing meditation. And that intention can actually, like, the awareness of what you care about can guide your practice, and it can help you stay consistent. So you could sit down, you want to do a dedicated practice, and you could say, like, my intention is to follow my breath for at least 10 seconds, or my intention is to be more present with my children, or my intention is to be a better leader at work. So it's something that really grounds your practice. So that's the first step, is setting an intention. Then we start to follow the breath. So the breath is the one thing, it's our companion that was born, you know, when we were born, our breath came with us, and our breath is gonna be with us till the day we die. So it's really behooves of us to like, develop a relationship with that, you know? So we start following our breath. And since I'm guessing all of us are not cave dwelling, sitting in a lotus position, you know, it's probably we're going to become distracted. So that's gonna happen, right? So we're gonna follow our breath, and then we're gonna become distracted because we're human. And after that distraction happens, this is really an invitation to be kind to yourself. Distraction happens, we have a strong conditioning to leave the present moment. That's just the way it is. So when you become distracted, you notice the distraction, and with a kind, calm manner, like we call this the grandparent mind, so like how your grandparent would treat you, treat yourself like that. So bring yourself back, notice the distraction, reorientate your attention, and continue following the breath. Got it? So follow the breath, you become distracted, you notice that you become distracted, that meta attention, that meta awareness, then reorientate your attention back to the breath, right? And there is a posture, so we want to sit in a way that's relaxed and alert at the same time. There's a whole field called body cognition. I don't know if you guys have seen the TED Talk by, her name is Amy Cuddy. So good. The way you actually hold your body, it affects your mood and your emotions and everything, so it's important to think about. But the way we are going to sit is a way that's relaxed and alert at the same time. Your feet flat on the floor. And you might explore not like leaning back in your chair, but kind of sitting in a way that keeps you awake. And not having your head up like this, but kind of tucking your chin and letting your hands rest in a way that's easy. Your feet flat on the floor. And we're going to practice our first attention training. So go ahead and let your eyes fall to a 45-degree angle, or fully closing them if you wish. And then let's begin by connecting with your intention. Your intention for doing this practice, something that really is meaningful for you right now. You may want to be more focused and productive, more of a skillful leader, or you just want to have a healthier way to manage stress. Something that's really an important intention for you right now. And now bringing your attention to your breath. Noticing the movement of your belly and your chest. Perhaps the sensation of air passing through your nose or your throat. Gaining an awareness of the whole body breathing. And wherever the sensation of the breath is the most vivid for you, just allow your attention to rest there. And for the rest of this practice, think of this sensation, your breath, as your anchor point. So whenever the mind wanders, bringing it back to this feeling of breathing, wherever you happen to feel it most. Breathing in and breathing out, effortlessly, not manipulating your breath in any way. also depends on a lot of external factors. But in general, as you train yourself, you have the ability to hold your attention longer. But it's very also circumstantial based on your your life, the amount of stress you have in your life. If you've had a lot of change in your life, there's a lot of things that will disrupt it. But in general, as you practice more, you'll strengthen that muscle, basically. Yeah, that muscle of attention. Yeah. You guys ready for a break? Yeah. All right.
And just one last thing before you break, the little micro practice of this is this idea of a minute to arrive. And so just even when you start, how many of you are running from meeting to meeting to meeting? Yeah, so even call, yeah, right? Just taking a minute in between or at the start of every one of those to just get yourself centered. Or even bring the room back together and say, hey, can we just set an intention for the meeting? Or can we take a few breaths and just get presence because we've been all running from the last thing to this thing. Just one little story here, SAP, the IT company, right? They have now taken this idea of a minute to arrive. They have a chief mindfulness officer. They've started taking SIY across their entire organization. But this is a little micro practice they start all their meetings with. Just a minute to arrive. Pretty powerful, right? SAP is like 30 or 40,000 employees and they're taking this out to everybody. And so we've got two trainings here, that focused attention training and this minute to arrive. So I think you guys are ready for a break. So let's take 15 minutes from your watch right now. I have 10:40, so 10:55 is the